Forget the silver platters and the crystal flutes of champagne. While the general public imagines a princess dining on endless heaps of caviar and rare truffles, the reality of Princess Anne's daily life is the polar opposite. Behind the gates of Gatcombe Park, the most industrious member of the royal family treats food with a military-like efficiency that would shock most of her aristocratic peers. To her, a meal is not a celebration, nor is it a performance. It is simply fuel. The Princess Royal is famous among palace staff for her absolute zero-nonsense approach to dining. She eats fast, she hates fuss, and she utterly despises culinary trends. If a dish requires a manual to understand, or arrives at the table obscured by a cloud of liquid nitrogen, it simply will not stay on her plate. Former royal chef Darren McGrady recalls her looking at those tiny microscopic portions, arranged with tweezers, and asking bluntly, "Where is the actual food?" She wants something she can eat with a fork, not a magnifying glass. This creates a fascinating contrast with the traditional royal image. While other members of the firm might politely navigate a 7-course molecular gastronomy experience, Anne finds the theater of modern cooking entirely pointless. She is a worker, not a performer. She once attended a high-end charity gala where each course was accompanied by a printed card explaining the flavor narrative and the culinary journey. A former staff member recalls that Anne left the cards untouched, leaned over, and quietly asked, "Are there any sandwiches available backstage?" She chooses sustenance over conceptual art every single time. This preference for simplicity speaks volumes about her character. In a world of royal luxury, she remains a woman who values time and productivity above all else. If you admire this level of unwavering practicality, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into royal secrets. And tell us in the comments, if you were a princess, would you prefer a Michelin star tasting menu or a reliable sandwich? But this practicality isn't just about personal preference. It is a powerful political statement. Would you believe a princess is willing to offend a host nation and break centuries of protocol over a single plate of foie gras? In our next chapter, we reveal the one luxury item she considers a crime. In the high-stakes world of international diplomacy, refusing a dish served by your host is often seen as a calculated insult. For the British royal family, adhering to protocol is usually non-negotiable. But Princess Anne has never been one to follow the rules, simply because they exist. For over 5 decades, she has maintained a quiet but firm protest against one of the most prestigious delicacies in the world, foie gras. Long before animal welfare became a mainstream global concern, the Princess Royal recognized the brutal reality behind the production of this luxury item. While others at the table might see a symbol of French culinary excellence, Anne sees only the cruelty involved in the process. This isn't a modern trend for her. She has held this stance since the 1970s, showing a level of ethical foresight that was years ahead of its time. Imagine the scene at a grand state dinner in Paris during the year 1980. The hall is filled with the elite of French society, and the air is thick with expectation. The centerpiece of the evening is served a meticulously prepared foie gras, intended to honor the visiting royals. To refuse this would be seen by many as a direct snub to French culture. Yet, as the plates were placed before the dignitaries, Anne's remained untouched. Former palace staff described the meticulous planning that goes into these moments. Her team often attempts to arrange alternatives weeks in advance, but when an unexpected dish appears, Anne does not flinch. A former aide recalled the tension of that night, stating, "The French hosts certainly noticed." There was a brief, heavy silence as her plate sat there, pristine and ignored. But the princess did not offer a lengthy explanation or a polite apology. She simply moved on to the next course, her silence speaking louder than any protest banner ever could. This rejection reveals a fundamental truth about her character. She values authenticity over diplomatic convenience. She is willing to be the most uncomfortable person in the room if it means staying true to her conscience. Holding onto your moral ground is one thing, but Anne's discipline extends far beyond ethics into the realm of pure professional survival. To ensure she never misses a single day of work, a record she has held for over 50 years, she enforces an extreme rule against some of the world's most expensive delicacies. Wait until you hear why she treats a raw oyster like a diplomatic minefield that she refuses to navigate. While celebrities and high society diners often crave the briny luxury of raw oysters and chilled sashimi, Princess Anne views these delicacies with the suspicion of a bomb disposal expert. To much of the world, a platter of fresh seafood is the height of sophistication. To the Princess Royal, it is a high-risk gamble she simply refuses to take. She treats raw shellfish like a diplomatic minefield that she is unwilling to navigate, regardless of the occasion or the host. Her reasoning is brutally practical. Over the past 5 decades, Anne has earned a reputation as the hardest-working member of the royal family, often performing hundreds of engagements a year. Most notably, she has famously never called in sick for royal duties in over 50 years. This isn't because she never gets ill. It is because she refuses to allow herself to be taken down by something as avoidable as a bad meal. She has performed official visits while suffering from common colds, and has even carried out engagements with broken bones from riding accidents. In her mind, a physical injury is manageable, but the incapacitating nature of food poisoning is an unacceptable risk to her schedule. One former royal protection officer recalled the logic behind her ironclad rule, stating that she simply refuses to let a questionable piece of seafood break her legendary attendance record. You can work through a fractured wrist, but you cannot represent the crown while suffering from a bad oyster. This policy is absolute and applies to everything raw, from high-end sushi and beef carpaccio to trendy tartare and ceviche. If it has not been thoroughly cooked, it does not touch her plate. This leads to some polite but firm moments during her international travels. At a seafood festival in Scotland, a local fisherman once proudly presented her with a tray of the finest, freshest oysters as a special honor. The crowd watched, expecting her to partake in the local tradition. Instead, she offered a gracious smile and said, "How lovely, but I don't eat raw shellfish. Perhaps you could show me your smoked salmon instead." It was a masterclass in being firm but polite, sacrificing a luxury culinary experience to ensure she is ready for work at 8 o'clock the very next morning. Giving up the world's most expensive delicacies for the sake of a work schedule is a logical sacrifice for a woman of her discipline. But as it turns out, her dietary restrictions aren't just about health. She also avoids some of the most popular comfort foods in Britain for a reason that is purely about logistics, specifically, the logistical nightmare of a single drop of red sauce on a 20-year-old silk blouse. In the world of high society, a 12-course Michelin star tasting menu is often viewed as the ultimate culinary achievement. But to Princess Anne, these elaborate displays are nothing more than pointless theater. She has no interest in microscopic portions, edible flowers, or foam that disappears before it hits the tongue. Her disdain for culinary drama is legendary among palace chefs, but there is one specific reason for her selective eating that has nothing to do with her palate and everything to do with her closet. Enter the spaghetti bolognese dilemma. While it is a beloved staple in households across the globe, you will almost never see the Princess Royal wrestling with long, sauce-heavy pasta in public. For a woman who famously still wears the same high-quality wool coats and silk blouses she purchased in the 1980s, the risk of a single splash of red tomato sauce is a logistical disaster. She does not view her clothes as disposable fashion. She views them as long-term investments that must be protected with military-grade precision. A former royal dresser once remarked on her incredible ability to keep garments in pristine condition for 3 or 4 decades. The secret isn't just a talented dry cleaner, it is her tactical avoidance of messy foods. When pasta is on the menu at an official engagement, the kitchen staff knows it must be a short shape, such as penne or fusilli. These can be neatly speared with a fork, minimizing the risk of a sauce-covered catastrophe. Long pasta, which requires twisting and carries the constant threat of a stray splash, is considered a professional hazard. To Anne, a meal is a task to be completed, so she can move on to her next duty. She cannot afford the time or the indignity of changing her outfit midday because of a stray drop of sauce. This practical approach extends to any dish with runny gravies or anything that requires the use of hands. It is about maintaining the impeccable professional appearance expected of a representative of the crown every single hour of the day. This total commitment to self-reliance and control even follows her into the clouds. You might see her sitting in a first-class cabin on a long-haul official tour, surrounded by some of the most expensive gourmet airline food in the world. But while other dignitaries are tucking into their 3-course in-flight meals, Anne is likely opening a simple plastic container she brought from her own kitchen. What is inside would leave the wealthiest passengers in the world completely stunned. Imagine for a moment sitting in the silent, plush cabin of a first-class international flight. Around you, wealthy executives and dignitaries are eagerly scanning leather-bound menus, anticipating courses of lobster thermidor, vintage wines, and rich desserts. But as the flight attendants prepare the silver service, Princess Anne reaches into her bag and pulls out something that leaves the entire cabin and the staff completely stunned. She ignores the gourmet menu entirely and opens a simple, practical plastic Tupperware container. Inside isn't a rare delicacy, but rather a selection of items from her own kitchen. Perhaps some smoked kippers, a couple of hard-boiled eggs, or a slice of cold game pie. To the average passenger, the pungent aroma of smoked fish and eggs at 30,000 feet might seem like a social faux pas, but for the Princess Royal, this is the ultimate power move. It is an act of absolute self-reliance. While others are at the mercy of airline catering, Anne is in total control of her health and her energy levels. This isn't about being picky, it's about the mission. Princess Anne knows that representing the crown on a global stage requires her to be at her physical peak from the moment she steps off the plane. She refuses to arrive at a high-stakes diplomatic meeting feeling bloated from salty airline food or, worse, suffering from an upset stomach caused by an unfamiliar ingredient. A former royal protection officer, Timothy Lawrence, once recalled the sight of fellow passengers watching in disbelief as Her Royal Highness tucked into her home-packed kippers while they were served elaborate, multi-course airline meals. The result? While the other dignitaries often needed hours to recover from travel fatigue, Anne would step onto the tarmac ready for immediate engagements. She trusts her own kitchen's reliability over any airline's gourmet pretensions. It is a level of discipline that ensures she is never a liability to the schedule. She would rather eat a cold egg from a plastic box and be ready for work than indulge in a luxury meal that might slow her down. This extraordinary level of self-control and practicality doesn't just apply to her life in the air. It goes much deeper, into the very heart of her home at Gatcombe Park. There, she enforces a rule regarding food waste that makes even the most frugal households look extravagant. Wait until you see what happens when a fresh meal is prepared while yesterday's leftovers are still in the fridge. Inside the kitchens of a royal estate, one might expect a brigade of chefs standing over steaming pots of the world's rarest ingredients, ready to serve a fresh masterpiece at a moment's notice. But at Gatcombe Park, the home of Princess Anne, the atmosphere is far more reminiscent of a thrifty farmhouse than a sprawling palace. While the staff is always ready to cook, the Princess Royal is more likely to be found standing in front of an open refrigerator, scanning the shelves for yesterday's leftovers. To Anne, the idea of wasting perfectly good food is a moral failure. She treats the royal larder with the kind of wartime thriftiness that has largely disappeared from modern society. Former members of her household have often shared stories of her checking the fridges, moving aside fresh produce to find a bowl of cold potatoes or the remains of a Sunday roast. When she finds something that needs finishing, she insists on eating it herself. Former housekeeper Margaret Rhodes once recalled a moment when the staff were preparing a fresh lunch for the household. Anne looked at the stove and then at the fridge, asking, "What about yesterday's chicken?" When the staff explained that the leftovers were intended for the workers' meal, she replied without a hint of irony, "Well, I am staff too, aren't I? Heat it up for me." This hatred of waste extends to her famous preference for black bananas. While most people would discard a banana once it begins to spot, Princess Anne prefers them when they are almost entirely overripe and bordering on black. To her practical, horse-loving mind, these bananas are significantly easier to digest and provide a quick, natural energy boost that outlasts any sugary, processed dessert. It is sustainability in its purest, most authentic form practiced by a woman who was living a zero-waste lifestyle long before it became a trendy catchphrase. Ultimately, Princess Anne's dining habits paint a portrait of a woman who is entirely comfortable in her own skin. She doesn't need the validation of a Michelin star chef or the luxury of a fresh gourmet meal every 3 hours. She is a true worker royal who understands that her value is not found in what she consumes, but in how she serves. By choosing fuel over theater and principles over protocol, she remains a fascinating outlier in the world of high royalty. If you enjoyed this look into the surprisingly disciplined life of the Princess Royal, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from behind the palace gates. What do you think of Princess Anne's no-waste rule? Would you eat a black banana if it meant having her level of energy? Let us know in the comments below.